Hi everyone, my name's Beth Levia and I play and teach the oboe in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Today I would like to talk to you about practicing. Practicing is something that I was pretty inefficient at when I was a student, and only in my last years of study did I kind of start to have an inkling of what it meant to practice. Some people think that practicing is just starting at the beginning of their piece and going to the end and repeating over and over and over again. And to be sure, you'll get better that way. It's just going to take you a really long time to do so. And I find that more and more people's time is taken up. We don't have as much time as we think or we would like to practice. So it's really important to be as efficient with your practice time as possible. You'll get better results too. It'll be more fun for you. What I've started to do is I've started to make an outline for my practice time. Even if it's just a rough sketch in my head, it's something. And if I'm practicing for something that has a deadline, I might actually write out a plan. So a plan might include and should include goals. What is your goal for that particular practice? And a goal can be a really simple thing. It can be just a matter of saying, well, I'm going to get through all my major scales today. Or I'm going to play the A flat major scale today, and I'm going to play it in eighth notes at quarter note equals 80. I'm going to play my A flat major scale in different articulations today. It could be something like, I'm going to work on the first page of my piece and I'm going to practice it up to a particular metronome mark. It could be, I need to work on my high notes. Today I'm going to practice getting my high notes in tune. And so setting little goals like that for yourself can be extremely helpful, crucial, I think. And it will make you feel like you're actually accomplishing something in your practice time. So I don't have anything specific like that to talk to you about today, but instead I'd like to talk to you about how I outline my practice time. So I divide it into sections. So at this point, it doesn't really matter if you have 20 minutes to practice or 2 hours to practice. We're just going to talk about different categories of practice. And I've divided mine into 7 official categories, but there's a bonus category at the end. So the first category is reed exercises. And that's where I just take the reed by itself and I practice with the reed, doing little exercises like that. Now, depending on how much time you have, it doesn't really matter because I've done the calculations for you. So in my little outline, I've put that at 2%. 2% of my practice time, I'm going to do those reed exercises. In context, if we take an hour as an example of an amount of time to practice, 2% of an hour is just a little over 1 minute. So we're going to round down to 1 minute. 1 minute. Maybe playing little tunes on your reed. Something like that, just for a minute. These exercises help me to strengthen my embouchure, so I like that a lot. The next category is long tones, and I've put this at 3%. If we're basing this on a 1 hour time frame, 3% is just under 3 minutes. Just under 2 minutes. So I'm going to round up to 2 minutes. Long tones are so good for us. It seems like I should be doing more than 2 minutes, but you can do all kinds of things with your long tones. You can do octave leaps, you can do dynamics, you can practice difficult intervals. So we can incorporate a lot of stuff into that category of long tones, and really just for 2 minutes. The third category is tuning. Oh, this is a big thing, tuning on the oboe. We have to give that A for the orchestra, so it's really important that we have a solid idea of where our pitch sits. And of course, every reed is different. So we have to make sure that we can play the reed we have in tune. So I've got lots of really fun little tuning exercises that I like to do. Sometimes I take my tuning machine and I try to play a scale or a series of notes with my needle straight up and down, not letting it vary at all. And that'll take me a long time just to do that. Other times I want to practice being flexible with my embouchure, so I'll take my needle and I'll bend it down 5 cents. And I'll play a scale there. Or up 5 cents, and I'll play a scale there. So sometimes I do some tuner games to practice tuning. I also really like practicing with a drone. So I'll turn on a reference note and I'll play the note, the tonic note, then the dominant note, the fifth above, the octave above that, the dominant above that. So I'll do a whole kind of a harmonic series, not quite, but tonics and dominants with a reference tone. And that's a really great way to practice that. And I do that for 5% of the time. And if that's from an hour long, if we're starting with an hour, 5% of an hour is 3 minutes. Only 3 minutes. Articulation is my next category. I like to practice fast tonguing. With the metronome, I will set it at something, maybe 120, and I'll try to play right with the metronome, just any note. And then 2 times. Etc. I can do that. There are all kinds of little articulation exercises out in the world, and any of those would definitely qualify for that category of articulation. Making sure that our tonguing is accurate. It's the tip of our tongue on the tip of the reed. We've got a nice clean articulation that we can articulate quickly. And if you're a person who double tongues, this is a category for double tonguing too. And at 5% of our time, based on a 1 hour practice session, 3 minutes. 3 minutes of articulation. And then you're done. Next category, scales. Scales, yay! I love my scales. I practice them lots. And here I've budgeted 25% of my practice time. So 15 minutes of practice on scales. Now, I like to do all of my scales every day. I do them up, down, arpeggio. I do thirds, fourths, dominant sevenths. I like to do patterns. I try to include a chromatic scale in there. So 15 minutes for me is nothing. If you're still working on your scales, you still have a few more to learn. 15 minutes is nothing. But it's a good amount of time. You know you've done your scales when you've completed those 15 minutes. If you're not practicing an hour, it's less than 50 minutes, right? If you're doing half an hour, that's 7.5 minutes. Next category, etudes. Everybody should be working from a study book. You could have melodic studies, you could have technical studies. Doesn't matter what the studies are, but I've budgeted 15 minutes or 25% of your practice time to your studies. If you've got a teacher, that teacher's probably listening to you play studies every week, so you need to practice them. So that's what I've budgeted, 15 minutes of a 60-minute practice session, or 25% of your practice time to your etudes. That brings us to category 7, our last category, which is our repertoire. This includes any solo repertoire you're working on, any ensembles, if you've got orchestra music, band music, if you play in a chamber group, any kind of performance material you have to play. So I've budgeted 35% of my practice time to that, and that equals 21 minutes of my 60-minute practice session. And you might think, well, that's not enough. Only 20 minutes? That's your repertoire. That's the main stuff that we practice. But it's so, I can't tell you how important it is to go back and do your tuning. The tuning exercises you did are going to help your repertoire. The articulation exercises you did are going to help your repertoire. The long tones are going to help your tone and therefore your repertoire. So really, this whole time, you've been practicing your repertoire. And only for these 21 minutes, or 35% of your practice time, are you actually assembling the notes in the order in which they appear in the repertoire. So that takes us to 100% of our time and we're done. Except, I've got a bonus category here that I think is actually pretty important, and I wish I had given it actual time. But I have a bonus category called fun, and that's where I put any sight reading or improvising or composing you want to do. You can revisit pieces you've played in the past. You can try to pick out tunes by ear and play that way. Any of that really enjoyable stuff is where I put that. So if you do have some extra time, you've budgeted an hour to practice, but really you don't have to leave for another 5 minutes, well then you get to have a little fun at the end of your practice session. And that's what it's all about, if you ask me, so that's a really important part. So I hope that helps you when you're practicing. Set a goal, set several goals, but make sure that you do have a goal in mind, and then budget time in your practice day for a little bit of work in all of the categories that I mentioned. And if there's anything that you can think of that I didn't mention, obviously put it in there, make sense of it for you, and then message me. I'd love to hear what you're adding to your practice time. So this is a rough guideline. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine. Make a plan that does work for you. If this is a little too rigid, just make your own. Say, I have 2 practice sessions today. They're each going to be whatever they are. And in the first practice session, I'm going to play some scales. And in the second practice session, I'm going to play my repertoire. Whatever works for you, as long as you are goal-oriented about it, it's all good. You'll have more success, you'll have more fun, you'll sound better, and you'll have more time to do other things as well. So I hope that helps you. Again, my name's Beth Levia, and I play and I teach the oboe. Please get in touch if you're interested in online lessons or in-person lessons if you live in Edmonton. And yeah, I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.